What did people eat in the Regency era? You could write whole theses about this, but face this as a very short introduction. Like in every historical era, what you ate and drank in the Regency depended on your economic circumstances and your geographic location. Methods for transporting and storing food were nowhere near the ones available to us today, so people were heavily reliant on local production. In the 18th century, you see a rise in the use of cookbooks amid the wealthiest people. And over the 19th century, the way people have their meals changes. There are changes in meal times, the ways of serving menus, and the growing variety of food available. Milk, bread, and oats are food staples. A series of bad harvests, unaided by the year without a summer, 1816, will lead to the increase of prices, which in turn leads to several revolutions, including Bridport in 1817. White bread was preferred by those who could afford it, but both white and brown bread were often adulterated by sellers. Brioche, a bread enriched with eggs and butter, was to be enjoyed only by a few, and Bath buns, which are still produced today, were very popular. Oats, also known as gruel, were pretty common, as was butter, although some of it could be of pretty bad quality, as seen in letters of the time. The cuts of meat that people consumed also depended on their economic availability, with the gentry having access to certain delicacies like swans. Even in wealthier households, the mistress of the house often took charge of the poultry, which also provided eggs. Stock and almonds were the main ingredients in white soup, which was very appreciated and served at the Netherfield ball in Pride and Prejudice. Hunting was another way to get meat, with pheasants and venison being highly appreciated. Fish would have been more common in coastal areas or near rivers, with mackerel, trout, shellfish, and others included at table. Vegetables and fruits depended on what could be grown locally, so it was a lot rarer for people in England to have tomatoes, for example, rather than carrots or cabbages, which were common. Jane Austen does mention having tomatoes in 1813. As for fruit, it was often made into preserves to last into the colder months. Like today, desserts were very popular. Ice could already be preserved, so sherbet and ice cream were available to the wealthy. Many other desserts included fruit, either fresh or in preserves, and cream. Liquor was added on occasion. Water was not always safe to drink due to contamination, so for this reason and others, alcoholic beverages were very popular. People would have wine, particularly Madeira, rum, beer, brandy, gin, cider, and others. Tea, of course, was also consumed, as well as coffee, sometimes with added spices and hot cocoa. Tea time as we know it, however, is a Victorian invention. At balls you would find copious amounts of drinks such as punch, ratafia, flavoured water, and flavoured syrups like capillaire. Mealtimes were also not as they are today. Breakfast was beginning to transition from very hearty meals to a lighter tea and toast. People dined a lot earlier than we do today, around the time we now have lunch. Luncheon was a light meal had by those who preferred later dinners. Supper was also a light meal, although that depended on the household. As artificial light develops throughout the century, dinner times moved later and later. Mushrooms, chestnuts, and other produce found in nature were also used to prepare meals. In the Regency era, picnics become very popular, especially amid the gentry, and you can often see them in romances of the time.